Hey, stop right now.
So keep your hand where we can see them, all right?
It began as an uneventful evening in Oconee County, Georgia. A standard patrol along the dimly lit streets, ensuring that the night remained quiet and ordinary. For the officers on duty, the shift had been devoid of any major incidents. The hum of the radio and the occasional passing vehicle provided the soundtrack to their routine. Then, a vehicle caught their attention. Its license plate triggered a flag in the system, indicating that the driver's license was suspended. A common violation, it seemed like another routine traffic stop. Little did they know that this unremarkable moment would unravel nearly 3 decades of mystery. The officers pulled the vehicle over, parking their cruiser strategically to illuminate the car ahead. Exiting their vehicle, they approached the driver's side with the cautious yet composed demeanor that comes with years of experience.
All right, I'm gonna have you go and step out the vehicle for me.
She's gonna come and get me. Yeah, so you're about 57 minutes away from me. I was almost at the hospital.
Okay. Take this off for me.
Send me what the information you put in your GPS, because that way
I didn't go.
The same thing.
I don't know the name of this place right here.
We'll get it figured out. We'll text it to you. It's Prince Avenue.
It's
All right,
Prince
so
Avenue.
here's what's gonna happen, Sakeem. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to place you into custody today. Okay. You're gonna have to go down to jail.
Oh no.
You got to get booked in. They're going to take your fingerprints and picture, and you'll get a bond. But because you're driving on suspended license, you got to go down to jail.
Sir, I did not know. I have children, I have a sick uncle, and I run the household.
I got you.
No, I really
We don't have a choice.
The man behind the wheel appeared cooperative, handing over his identification without hesitation. He identified himself as Rice Seacom, a name that raised no immediate red flags. The officers explained the situation. He was driving on a suspended license and would need to be detained. The man remained calm, showing no signs of resistance. To the officers, it felt like just another day on the job.
Sir, I do for my entire family.
Okay. Well,
Do you know
I don't have a choice here, man. I'm telling you.
I told you I was not going to get in my car. I swear to you, I wasn't going to get in
You
my
have a
car.
suspended license. You're driving a car without insurance. You've got that taken care
I've been
of.
doing it every
you got
day.
Suspended registration. You have to go down to the jail and get booked in. Just take your photograph. They're going to take your fingerprints. They'll give you a bond amount. You can bond out, and then you can get on the way up to the hospital. But you can't drive.
Sir,
So have a seat for
okay,
me, please.
all right. May I speak after you?
Have a seat for me, please.
Are you going to
Sit down, and then I'll listen to you. Okay, so what do you want to tell me?
On everything? My aunt just had a stroke. My uncle just had a stroke 2.5 weeks ago. I'm here helping my family. I don't even know who can come and bond me out. I don't even know who can come and bond me out.
After placing Seacom in the back of the cruiser, the officers began the short drive to the station. The man sat quietly, his demeanor unremarkable, even subdued. He was cooperative, answering questions politely, but without offering more information than necessary. There was nothing in his behavior to suggest he was anything other than who he claimed to be, a man caught in a minor legal violation. At the station, the intake process began as it always did. Standard booking procedures, fingerprinting, and database checks. It was all so routine that no one in the room could have anticipated the bombshell about to drop. The fingerprint scanner beeped, signaling that the data had been entered successfully. Moments later, the system responded, not with confirmation of Seacom's identity, but with a match for someone else entirely. The name Muhammad Bilal El Amin appeared on the screen, accompanied by an alert that sent shockwaves through the station. This was not just a case of mistaken identity. The fingerprints belonged to a fugitive who had been on the run for nearly 30 years, wanted for a heinous crime that had shaken a community to its core. El Amin was no ordinary fugitive. He had been wanted since 1994 for the cold-blooded murder of an 18-year-old in Atlanta, Georgia. The crime, committed in the prime of the victim's life, had devastated a family and left a community grappling with the senselessness of such violence. Following the murder, El Amin had vanished without a trace, leaving law enforcement frustrated and the victim's loved ones without closure. Despite a federal warrant for his arrest on charges of unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, El Amin had managed to evade capture, becoming one of the most elusive fugitives in the nation. The realization hit the officers like a thunderclap. The man they had just arrested for a suspended license, calm, cooperative, and unassuming, was in fact one of the most wanted criminals in the country. The mundane encounter had transformed into a pivotal moment in a decades-long pursuit of justice. El Amin's facade as Rice Seacom had finally crumbled, and his decades of deception had come to an abrupt end. The news spread quickly throughout the station, a mix of disbelief and vindication rippling through the ranks. For nearly 3 decades, El Amin had eluded the law, living under an assumed identity and blending seamlessly into society. The audacity of his actions, constructing an entirely new life while a family mourned the loss of their son, was chilling. It was a stark reminder of how some can bury the past, living as though their crimes never happened, even as the consequences of those actions ripple through the lives of others. As the officers delved deeper into El Amin's past, the weight of his crime became more evident. The murder he committed in 1994 had not been a crime of passion or an act of desperation. It was a cold, calculated act that had stolen a young life and left a family shattered. The victim's parents, siblings, and friends had been left to grapple with their grief year after year as the case grew colder. Each passing year without answers deepened their wounds, making El Amin's capture all the more significant. In the years following his crime, El Amin had built a new life as Rice Seckham. He had avoided the kind of mistakes that might draw attention, steering clear of serious legal trouble until his fateful traffic violation. It was a chilling testament to his ability to evade detection and live among society undetected. For 28 years, he had walked freely while his victim's family bore the weight of his actions. El Amin's arrest marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The news of his capture spread like wildfire, reigniting interest in a case that had long been relegated to the archives. Media outlets covered the story extensively, highlighting the role of modern technology and the tireless efforts of law enforcement in bringing a fugitive to justice. For the victim's family, the moment was bittersweet, a long-awaited closure tempered by the pain of reliving the loss. At a press conference held shortly after the arrest, a member of the victim's family spoke through tears, expressing both gratitude and sorrow. "For years, we thought this day would never come," they said. "Knowing that the man who took our son's life is finally in custody, it's overwhelming. We're so grateful to the officers who never stopped searching for him." Their words served as a poignant reminder of the enduring impact of violent crime and the importance of justice. El Amin's capture also raised questions that lingered in the air. How had he managed to remain undetected for so long? Who had helped him, knowingly or unknowingly, during his years as a fugitive? Had he committed other crimes while living as Rice Seckham? These unanswered questions added layers of intrigue to an already extraordinary story. While his arrest brought closure to one chapter, it also opened the door to further investigations. For law enforcement, the case underscored the importance of diligence, technology, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Advances in fingerprint analysis and database integration had played a crucial role in unmasking El Amin, but it was the vigilance of the officers who stopped his vehicle that set the wheels of justice in motion. Their routine actions had led to an extraordinary outcome, a reminder that even the smallest decisions can have profound consequences. As El Amin sat in a holding cell, the weight of his past finally catching up to him, the officers reflected on the unpredictability of their work. What began as a routine traffic stop had become a momentous event, bringing an end to decades of evasion and deceit. For the victim's family, El Amin's arrest was a testament to the persistence of truth and the resilience of those who seek it. For El Amin, it was a stark reminder that no matter how far you run, the past has a way of catching up. This encounter serves as a chilling example of how the mundane can uncover the extraordinary, how a simple traffic stop can change the course of history. El Amin's story is a powerful reminder of justice's inescapable reach and the enduring hope of those who never stop seeking it. It was a seemingly ordinary evening on March 16, 2023, when a call came through to the local police department. The voice on the other end was filled with apprehension and urgency. A resident reported erratic behavior by a family member at a nearby residential building. The individual, a young man, had been leaping from the second-floor balcony repeatedly. The caller, identifying themselves as the man's parent, expressed fear for his safety and implored the police to intervene. What began as a welfare check soon spiraled into one of the most unsettling encounters the officers had ever faced. As the officers arrived on the scene, the neighborhood was quiet, an eerie calm hanging in the air. The faint glow of streetlights barely illuminated the building in question, casting long shadows across the gravel driveway. The officers approached cautiously, their boots crunching against the ground, their breaths visible in the cool evening air. Body cameras captured their every move, preserving the events that were about to unfold in haunting detail. Upon reaching the front of the building, The officers scanned the area, looking for any sign of the reported disturbance. The stillness was broken suddenly by a loud commotion coming from above, a flurry of movement on the balcony. Their flashlights cut through the darkness just in time to reveal a man leaping from the second story.
Hey, stop, right now. Stop. Relax.
He just jumped
John, he just jumped from the banister again.
again.
Relax. What's going on? Why are you jumping like that? Are you hurt? What's your name? What's your name? I'm Nick.
Let him take over now. I'm not going to say it.
What's your name?
There may be a background research with him.
What's wrong?
The sound of his landing echoed through the still night. He hit the ground with a heavy thud, a fall that would incapacitate most. But to the officer's astonishment, the man rose almost immediately. His movements were disjointed, his body language unsettling. It was as though he were both disoriented and strangely purposeful. He stood there for a moment, his chest heaving with labored breaths that sounded unnatural, almost animalistic. The officers called out to him, their voices calm but firm. "Stay where you are. We just want to talk." The man didn't respond. Instead, he remained frozen, his head tilting slightly as though he were trying to process their words, or perhaps something else entirely. His breathing continued, deep and guttural, a sound that sent a shiver down their spines. The officers cautiously approached, maintaining a safe distance. The man's appearance was unremarkable at first glance. His clothes were ordinary, his frame unthreatening, but there was something about his demeanor that set their nerves on edge. He didn't run or lash out, but simply stood there, his gaze fixed intently on one of the officers. His eyes were dark, his expression unreadable, yet his presence was anything but passive. One officer attempted to engage him. "We're here to help. Can you tell us your name?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, his movements slow and deliberate. The officers exchanged a glance, their unease growing with each passing second. The man's silence, coupled with his unnerving breathing, created an atmosphere of tension that was almost suffocating. At that moment, the man's parents emerged from the building, their faces etched with worry. The father spoke first, his voice trembling as he explained the situation. "He's been acting like this for hours. He won't speak to us. He keeps jumping off the balcony. We didn't know what else to do, so we called you." The officers asked the man's name. "Amish," the father replied. "His name is Amish." Turning back to the man, the officers tried again to communicate. "Amish, can you hear us? Are you hurt?" Still, there was no response. Instead, Amish began to move. His steps were unsteady but purposeful, and his focus remained locked on one officer. The movement was subtle at first, a shuffling of feet that seemed almost innocuous, but there was a deliberate intensity in his gaze, an unspoken challenge that made the officers instinctively step back. "Amish, stop right there," one officer said, raising a hand to maintain distance. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to make sure you're okay." Amish continued to inch closer, his breathing growing louder. The officer's unease escalated. His movements weren't aggressive, yet they were unsettling in their precision. It was as though he were testing boundaries, searching for an opening. The officer spoke again, his tone firm but steady. "You're making me uncomfortable. If you keep moving like this, I'll have to detain you for your own safety, and your parents." For a moment, it seemed as though Amish might comply. He stopped moving, his breathing still heavy but his body now motionless. The officers remained on high alert, watching for any sign of escalation. Then, without warning, Amish lunged. The attack was sudden and violent, a burst of energy that caught the officers off guard. Despite his wiry frame, Amish displayed an alarming strength, swinging at the nearest officer with a force that belied his appearance. The officers acted quickly, their training kicking in as they subdued him and brought him to the ground. Even as they restrained him, Amish continued to resist, his growls echoing through the night like something out of a nightmare. "What's going on with this guy?" one officer muttered as they struggled to secure the handcuffs. "Is he on something?"
That's enough.
Yeah, he keeps trying to grab me really hard. You're being polite, but he's not. You know what I'm saying?
We've been polite this entire time.
Yeah, you notice how he grabs me?
Would you knock it off? Knock it off. Now he's trying to trip me.
Stop.
Stop it. Get in the car and we can be done. Got it?
Got it.
Yeah, I will. Feet first.
Once restrained, Amish was placed in the back of the police cruiser. His parents approached again, visibly shaken. "He's never acted like this before," his father said, his voice cracking. "It's like he's not even himself." The officers questioned the parents further, trying to piece together a timeline of events. According to them, Amish had been acting strangely all evening, pacing back and forth, muttering unintelligibly, and refusing to respond to their attempts to communicate. His repeated jumps from the balcony had been the breaking point, prompting them to call for help. The footage shifts to Amish in the cruiser. Even while restrained, his behavior remains deeply unsettling. He sits rigidly, his eyes darting around the cabin, his breathing still loud and guttural. At times, he stares straight ahead, his gaze empty yet intense, as though he were lost in another world. The officers exchange uneasy glances, the tension in the air thick and unrelenting. As the cruiser pulls away, taking Amish to a local hospital for evaluation, the officers are left grappling with more questions than answers. Was this a case of severe psychological distress, substance-induced delirium, or was there something else entirely at play? Something beyond their understanding? The raw strength, the guttural growls, the unrelenting focus, all of it defied easy explanation. The encounter left a lasting impression on everyone involved. Amish's parents were left grappling with fear and confusion, their son's behavior a mystery that medical professionals would now have to unravel. For the officers, the night served as a sobering reminder of the unpredictable and often unsettling nature of their work. As the footage fades, one thing remains clear. Not all encounters have clear resolutions. Sometimes the most disturbing moments are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers. What had caused Amish's behavior? Was it the result of a mental health crisis or something more sinister? The answers, if they existed, were not readily apparent. But one thing was certain. This was a night no one involved would ever forget. On the evening of November 22, 2021, 2 officers were dispatched to investigate a suspected break-in in a quiet suburban neighborhood.
I left for a while to go shopping, and when I came home, the door was open. I think somebody broke in.
Does anyone live in the house?
Yes, my husband, myself, and our 2 kids, but they're out of town right now. They're with his parents.
And how many rooms do you have?
2 upstairs and 1 downstairs.
All right, we're gonna have to go and search the house. Is it okay if we go in?
Yeah, of course.
You don't have any like pets or dogs or anything?
No.
The call had come from a visibly distressed homeowner who had returned from an evening shopping trip to find her front door ajar. The unusual discovery had set off alarm bells. With her family out of town, the house should have been empty. Afraid to step inside and unsure if someone might still be there, she called the police. The scene was deceptively tranquil as the officers arrived. The streetlights cast an amber glow over the manicured lawns, and the quiet hum of the neighborhood seemed almost soothing. But the homeowner's palpable anxiety dispelled any notion of serenity. She stood outside her home, wringing her hands, her gaze darting nervously toward the open door. The officers approached her, listening as she explained the situation. Her husband and children were away, visiting relatives, leaving her as the only occupant of the house. She had been out running errands, returning only to find the door slightly ajar, a detail that made her feel something was wrong. The officers reassured her as they began their investigation, stepping cautiously through the doorway with flashlights in hand. Inside, the house was eerily still. At first glance, everything seemed untouched. Furniture remained in place, the surfaces were undisturbed, and there were no immediate signs of forced entry. But the atmosphere was heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The officers announced their presence, their voices echoing faintly through the quiet rooms. "Police, if anyone is here, make yourself known." The words hung in the air, unanswered. The officers moved carefully through the ground floor, clearing the living room, kitchen, and dining area. Each space was meticulously checked, yet nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But despite the lack of evidence, both officers felt a creeping sense of unease, as though they were being watched. One officer stayed downstairs to finish searching the area while the other ascended the staircase to check the upper floor. The wooden steps creaked underfoot, the sound unnaturally loud in the otherwise silent house. The flashlight's beam danced along the walls, casting long, shifting shadows that seemed to stretch and reach with each movement. The hallway upstairs was narrow and dark, the air feeling colder than on the ground floor. The officer checked the first room, which appeared to be a child's bedroom. Toys were neatly arranged on shelves, and the bed was perfectly made. Nothing seemed disturbed, yet the sense of unease persisted. The officer moved to the next door, hesitating for a moment before reaching for the handle. Before he could touch it, the door creaked open on its own. The sound was slow and deliberate, as though an unseen hand were pushing it. The officer froze, his breath catching in his throat. He shone his flashlight into the room, its beam cutting through the darkness. The room was empty, no movement, no sign of an intruder. Still, the sight of the door moving on its own was unsettling. Stepping inside, the officer scanned every corner, his flashlight revealing nothing but furniture and an undisturbed bed. Yet, the inexplicable creak of the door remained vivid in his mind. He left the room and continued down the hallway, his senses heightened, his grip tightening on his flashlight. As he finished checking the upstairs rooms, a loud noise suddenly reverberated through the house.
Downstairs clear.
It was unmistakable, the heavy, deliberate sound of footsteps on the wooden floorboards. They came from the same hallway he had just cleared. Spinning around, he pointed his flashlight toward the source of the noise. The hallway was empty. His partner downstairs called out, having heard the sound as well. The officer on the upper floor quickly descended the stairs, joining his partner in the entryway. Together, they decided to conduct another sweep of the house, this time sticking close to one another. The unexplained noise and the creaking door had shaken their confidence in their initial findings. Retracing their steps, the officers meticulously rechecked every room on the ground floor. They examined the furniture, peered into closets, and even opened the pantry and the kitchen. Yet nothing seemed out of place. Every drawer was closed, every item was where it should be. But the oppressive feeling of being watched remained, as though the house itself was alive with unseen energy. When they returned upstairs, they moved as a unit, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The creaking door was tested, but it now remained still. The footsteps, so loud and clear moments ago, had left no trace. No scuffs on the floorboards, no displaced items, nothing to suggest anyone else was in the house. Yet, the silence felt charged, as if the house was waiting for something. After a thorough second search, the officers were forced to conclude that no one was there. They returned to the homeowner, who had been anxiously waiting outside, and explained their findings. They assured her that there were no signs of forced entry, no indication of a break-in or burglary, but they couldn't offer an explanation for the open door or the eerie sounds. The homeowner, though relieved to hear that no intruder had been found, remained visibly unsettled. "It doesn't make sense," she murmured, glancing nervously at the house. The officers advised her to lock all doors and windows, adding that she should call them again if anything else unusual occurred. As the officers prepared to leave, the tension of the encounter lingered. They filed their report, noting the unexplained events but lacking evidence to justify further investigation. Yet, the experience stayed with them. The creaking door, the heavy footsteps, and the pervasive sense of being watched defied logic. The house, though physically empty, had felt occupied by something unseen. In the days that followed, both officers found themselves replaying the night's events in their minds. Was it possible someone had been in the house but managed to evade detection? Or was there something else at play, something beyond their understanding? The lack of answers only deepened their unease. This encounter is a reminder of how unsettling the unexplained can be. There was no forced entry, no sign of movement, and no evidence of a crime. Yet the officers' instincts told them they had stumbled into something far from ordinary. The open door, the creaking, the footsteps, they were all real. But the source of these phenomena and the reason for the lingering tension remained a mystery. For the homeowner, The night was a chilling reminder that even the safest places can feel threatening under the right circumstances. For the officers, it was an experience that blurred the line between reality and the inexplicable, leaving them to wonder if they had encountered something beyond their comprehension. As time passed, the memory of that night refused to fade, a haunting puzzle with no solution. For many police officers, the unpredictability of their work is a given. Calls range from the mundane to the extraordinary, but every now and then they face situations so bizarre they leave even seasoned officers questioning what is real. On an unremarkable evening, 2 officers found themselves caught in one such situation, a report that would challenge their understanding of the ordinary and plunge them into the unknown. The footage begins with the officers parked beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, the faint hum of the patrol car's engine breaking the stillness of the night. It is the kind of evening that lulls one into complacency, where the air seems heavy with quiet and the monotony of routine. Then, the radio crackles to life. A call comes through, its description immediately unsettling. An unidentified figure described as 8 feet tall and walking on 5 legs has been spotted wandering the nearby area. The officers exchange glances, their expressions a mix of skepticism and intrigue. The description is so outlandish it feels more like a scene from a science fiction movie than a police dispatch. Still, the call is genuine, and duty compels them to investigate. Whatever the explanation may be, their role is to ensure the safety of the public and themselves. The officers exit their vehicle, flashlights in hand. The darkness of the area seems almost oppressive, the beam of their lights cutting through the blackness in narrow, focused streams. Each step forward feels deliberate, weighted by the unknown. The only sounds are the faint rustling of leaves and the crunch of their boots on the gravel path. The night air is still, amplifying every noise and heightening their awareness of the surroundings. As they move deeper into the reported area, the tension grows. The description from the dispatch repeats in their minds, 8 feet tall, walking on 5 legs. It's an image so absurd that their imaginations begin to fill in the blanks, conjuring shapes and shadows where there are none. Every flicker of movement in the periphery becomes a potential threat, every sound a harbinger of something unnatural. Their flashlights sweep the area methodically, illuminating tree trunks and dense underbrush. The officers are hyper-alert, scanning for any sign of the alleged figure. The silence is unnerving, broken only by the occasional static from their radios. Then, in the distance, they catch a glimpse of movement. The figure is barely visible at first, obscured by the shadows of the forest. As the officers move closer, its form becomes clearer, and their breath catches in their throats. It is tall, unmistakably tall, and its shape is unlike anything they've ever seen. The limbs, 5 of them, move in a way that defies natural anatomy, swaying and bending as the figure takes deliberate steps forward. The officers freeze, their flashlights trained on the figure. Their instincts scream at them to prepare for the worst. One officer tightens his grip on his flashlight, while the other places a hand on his holstered weapon, ready to draw if necessary. The figure does not seem to notice them at first, its movements slow and almost rhythmic, as though it is searching for something, or someone. The silence is shattered by the figure's sudden movement. It turns toward the officers, its limbs contorting as it takes a step closer. The officers call out, their voices firm and authoritative, demanding that the figure stop and identify itself. For a moment, it does not respond. Then, a sound emerges. A low, guttural laugh that echoes through the night, sending chills down their spines. The officers exchange wary glances. The laugh is unsettling, not just for its unexpectedness, but for its tone, which feels almost mocking. The figure takes another step forward, and in the beam of their flashlights, its true nature is revealed.
This character's name is Sai.
Okay.
And it's based on your psychological image of what fear is. So that's nothing specific, just your imagination. That's why you probably got a lot of different descriptions.
Yeah. Okay.
Because nothing's here you see is normal.
Okay. And then where were you going to go today?
I was just going to light, that's it.
To light? Mm-hmm. But what are you going to do? So what's the costume intentionally for?
Well, it's just for Halloween prop.
Okay. That looks really, really cool, man. How long did it take you to do it?
1 week on school night.
Really, really cool. And you live here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
$40.
And you have so many calls.
My bad. I did not mean to cause a disturbance.
No. You're fine. You're fine. It's just, it's
unusual.
It's very unusual.
What initially appeared to be a nightmarish creature is, in reality, a man wearing an elaborate Halloween costume. Relief floods the officers, replacing the tension that had gripped them moments ago. The costume is grotesque and impressively crafted, designed to evoke fear and confusion. The man inside the suit is grinning, clearly amused by the reaction he has elicited. He begins to remove parts of the costume, revealing himself as a harmless individual who had been testing his outfit for an upcoming event. The officers cannot help but chuckle, their laughter a mix of amusement and relief. The absurdity of the situation becomes apparent as they take a closer look at the costume. It is an intricate creation, towering and grotesque, with limbs crafted to mimic an otherworldly creature. The man's pride in his handiwork is evident as he explains the effort he put into designing it. What began as a tense and eerie encounter now takes on a lighthearted tone. The officers take a moment to document the incident, snapping photos with the man as a memento of the strange experience.
Mind if I take a picture, Greg?
Okay.
Dispatch don't believe it.
All right.
That's a high picture or a low picture?
Low picture,
All right.
You scared me walking down the street.
Halloween. Just be real careful.
Be very careful.
Oh yeah, definitely. Every year I'm careful.
Yeah. All right, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Happy Halloween.
They joke about how the call had sounded like something out of a horror movie, and how they'll have a story to tell their colleagues when they return to the station. The footage later reveals the officers driving back to their patrol car, their earlier tension replaced by banter and laughter. The man in the costume waves them off, his own night made by the unexpected attention his creation had garnered. The officers log the incident, noting it as a false alarm, but acknowledging the creativity behind the man's costume. Despite the humorous resolution, the encounter sparks discussions among viewers. Some question whether the entire incident was staged, pointing to the man's timing and the elaborate nature of the costume. Others argue that it was an innocent misunderstanding, the result of a harmless prank taken too far. Regardless of its origins, the encounter underscores the unpredictable nature of police work and the thin line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. This incident leaves viewers pondering the power of suggestion and the role of fear in shaping perceptions. How quickly can the mind conjure threats in the face of the unknown? The officers, though initially unnerved, approached the situation with professionalism and composure, turning what could have been a terrifying ordeal into a memorable and humorous experience. The night's events serve as a reminder that not everything strange or unsettling has a sinister explanation. Sometimes the unknown turns out to be little more than a creative individual testing the boundaries of imagination. Yet as the officers drive away, they cannot help but wonder what might have happened if the figure had been real. The forest remains dark and silent, a vast expanse of shadows and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Clowns have always been polarizing figures. For some, they represent joy and laughter, their bright costumes and painted smiles a symbol of carefree fun. For others, they evoke an unsettling fear, a feeling rooted in their exaggerated features and the eerie juxtaposition of cheerfulness and silence. When clowns step out of their usual roles and enter real-world settings in bizarre and menacing ways, their already sinister reputation takes on an entirely new dimension. Such was the case in Menasha, Wisconsin, during the infamous 2016 clown sighting hysteria. The night was calm and uneventful, with 2 police officers patrolling the quiet streets of the small town. The calm was broken by a dispatch call that left the officers exchanging puzzled glances. The report described 2 individuals dressed as clowns chasing passing cars along a lonely stretch of road. The caller's voice had been filled with fear, their description vivid enough to paint a chilling picture in the officers' minds. While the claim seemed almost too bizarre to believe, the officers knew they had to respond. The patrol car glided through the darkness, its headlights piercing the inky blackness of the night. The road was desolate, lined by thick trees that cast long shadows across the pavement. As the officers neared the location, the beam of their headlights illuminated 2 figures standing on the sidewalk. The figures were unmistakably clowns, their garish costumes and painted faces immediately standing out against the backdrop of the empty road. The officers slowed their car, taking in the eerie tableau before them. The clowns stood perfectly still, their grotesque masks frozen in exaggerated grins that seemed more malevolent than cheerful. The patrol car's lights bathed the scene in a harsh glow, highlighting every unnerving detail of their appearance. The clown's silence was unsettling, as was their lack of movement. They simply stood there, staring at the officers with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. The officers exited the vehicle cautiously, flashlights in hand. The night was unnaturally quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the patrol car's engine. The clowns remained motionless, their painted faces betraying no emotion. The officers called out to them, their voices firm and commanding, but the clowns gave no response. The stillness of the scene felt almost cinematic, as though they had stepped into a low-budget horror film come to life. As the tension mounted, the clowns finally began to move. Their motions were slow and deliberate, their exaggerated gestures adding to the surreal quality of the encounter. They took a few steps toward the officers, their body language theatrical and unsettling. The officers held their ground, their flashlights trained on the figures, ready to respond if the situation escalated further. The clown's silence persisted, heightening the unnerving atmosphere. After what felt like an eternity, the officers repeated their commands.
Nice. Make sure to keep your hand where we can see them, all right?
Yeah, you keep 17 okay? Thank you.
Why don't you guys come up to this barrier right here? Put your butts against it.
34. Gonna be on north at Buchanan, Wisconsin Auto.
This time, the clowns complied, raising their hands in surrender. As the officers approached cautiously, they noticed something else. A third individual sitting in a car parked nearby. It was a woman, seemingly waiting for the clowns. Her presence added another layer of mystery to the bizarre scene unfolding before them. The officers quickly secured the area, detaining the two clowns and the woman, while they tried to make sense of the situation. The clowns were unmasked, revealing two ordinary men beneath the unsettling facades. Their demeanor had shifted dramatically, the silent menace replaced by sheepish explanations. The woman, who had been driving the clowns from one location to another, claimed it was all a joke, a prank meant to scare people in the spirit of Halloween. As the officers questioned the trio, the truth began to emerge. The two men had been chasing passing cars in their clown costumes, deliberately trying to frighten drivers. The woman had acted as their getaway driver, moving them from one location to the next, to keep their antics unpredictable. While the prank may have been intended as harmless fun, its impact had been anything but. The fear it inspired was palpable, and the potential for accidents or injuries was significant. The officers maintained their professionalism, though their frustration was evident. What the trio saw as a joke was, to the officers, a reckless and dangerous act. The 2016 clown sightings had already stirred widespread panic, with reports of clowns lurking in forests, standing outside schools, and chasing people in the dead of night making headlines across the country. This incident in Menasha only added to the hysteria, turning an otherwise quiet town into the site of a real-life nightmare. As the officers escorted the suspects away, they reflected on the broader implications of the incident. The power of fear, they realized, lies not in the reality of a threat, but in the perception of one. The sight of clowns in the darkness, their faces painted in sinister grins, was enough to ignite the imagination and stoke the fires of dread. For the residents of Menasha, this encounter would not soon be forgotten. The footage of the incident, later shared by the department, sparked mixed reactions. Some viewers were outraged by the recklessness of the prank, while others were amused by the absurdity of the situation. Debates erupted online, with some questioning whether the event had been staged to capitalize on the clown hysteria of 2016. Regardless of its origins, the incident served as a reminder of how easily fear can take hold in the absence of clear answers. For the officers involved, the night ended with the resolution of a strange and unsettling case. Yet the memory of the clowns on the dark road lingered, a testament to the unpredictable nature of their work. They had encountered the bizarre and the unsettling, and while the explanation turned out to be mundane, the experience itself was anything but. As they drove away from the scene, the quiet of the road returned, but the eerie imagery of the clowns standing in the shadows remained imprinted in their minds. It was a chilling reminder of how the most mundane settings could become the backdrop for the unexpected. For the rest of us, the Menashe clown encounter serves as a strange and unsettling chapter in the annals of the 2016 clown hysteria, a phenomenon that blurred the line between prank and menace, reality and nightmare. That was 6 most disturbing footages caught on camera by cops. You can check my other videos that will be on the screen in 4 seconds. And with that, I'm out.